I believe when it comes to God's heart and what we see throughout the scripture, God is a clear communicator. And even though at times when we're reading it from a distance, the fact that we don't share the same cultural context or the same religious worldview because we're not Jews living under the law in the Old Testament, it can be easy for us to read it at face value and wrestle with, man, what in the world was actually going on here? But you better believe a Jew living in the Jewish world when Zechariah was prophesying heard Zechariah's message quite clearly. And God's desire was that they would respond to this clearly communicated message. So as much as we're able to effectively and slowly reconstruct that historical cultural world, it's going to aid in a clearer interpretation of the text. One aspect when it comes to a normal interpretation, I cannot fully appreciate, nor can I understand symbolic, figurative, or idiomatic expressions without understanding the culture of the day that they were spoken in. So there are certain things like a key phrase that you guys are probably already aware of if you've studied the Old Testament, where God refers to his relationship to Israel and he says to them that they are the apple of his eye. Well, you and I have a very similar idiomatic expression in English today. However, the sense may not be exactly the same. Fortunately, there are a lot of idiomatic expressions that existed in the Hebrew world that have been transferred into English, and we share that because of Judeo-Christian influence within the West. But there are a lot of them that we do not share, and it is on us to do the work to get in and try to really wrestle with what is the significance of this. At times, we can gloss over those things, and we do not want to do that. And especially if we're working through the text and we realize this symbol or this image is really going to aid in a clearer understanding of that section maybe, it's going to take a little more onus on our end to sit down, focus, and really wrestle with the text. Often, though, when you're studying the prophets, you're going to find that the best thing for you to do is not to just understand the book of Zechariah. Understand Zechariah's contemporaries. Haggai was speaking during the same time that Zechariah was speaking. We also find out, and Ezra thankfully brings a lot to the table in regards to defining what was happening. So I want to read Ezra chapter 5, Ezra chapter 6. I want to read the sections in Nehemiah that speak back to the time frame and the state of Israel as they have come out of slavery, exile for 70 years, and now they're trying to get their feet under them. Those books are only going to help frame in Zechariah's message or Haggai's message or whatever time frame we want. If I'm wrestling with the book of Zechariah, well, I want to know, does Zechariah have contemporaries? Oh, as we dig, we realize Daniel and Ezekiel are living within the same world to some degree that Jeremiah was living in. And the more I understand what God had to say through Daniel and say through Ezekiel, it can frame in better and aid in you and I understanding Jeremiah's message. So really cool to see how God has given up his word. And honestly, when you understand the worldview or the cultural context of the Jews within that day, it's incredible that God not only had expectations on the nation of Israel, but he was eager that Israel would understand, that they would understand clearly his expectations and they would be able to respond. And I think there's nothing that has changed. 2,500 years out of the day that Zechariah was speaking, the same is true for you and I. God's heart is that you and I would be able to respond to him appropriately. And we're going to see that through the book of Zechariah, through whatever complex section that we're wrestling with. Brian, I'm really not sure if that's what's happening here. What we are able to deduce from our study is that God was desirous that the Jews who had just come out of slavery would understand his desire for them and they would respond. And God is clear in his communication with us today. He wants you and I to know what it is to walk with him as we live in this church age, how it is that he will pour out his life through his bride corporately and through you and I as individual members of his body, and how he can use us to really impact this world in a powerful way.